Hey, today we're going to talk about equivalent ratios. Equivalent ratios are ratios that may look different, but they actually represent the same portion. So, for example, if I said that in my class there was one girl for every two boys, one equivalent ratio would be okay, well, maybe I have four girls, which would mean I would have eight boys. So the ratio of 1 to 2 is equivalent to the ratio of 4 to 8. So what we're going to do, I want to list 5 ratios that are equivalent to 8 to 12. And so what I would do, there's a couple different things you can do. The first thing that you can do is we can multiply by a giant 1 to get new ratios. So I'm going to start with my ratio of 8. That's an 8 to 12. Okay, and so one thing I can do is I can multiply both of those by, let's say, 2. So my new ratio, that's a 2. My new ratio would be 16 to 24. So the ratio 8 to 12 is equivalent to the ratio of 16 to 24. Another thing I could do, so I have the ratio of 8 to 12. Okay. I could multiply maybe by 3. And as long as you're multiplying both pieces by the same number, then you're going to get an equivalent ratio. Again, it represents the same amount. The numbers may look different, but it represents the same portion. So 8 times 3 gives me 24. 2. 12 times 3 gives me 36. So 8 to 12 is a similar ratio, or is the same ratio as 24 to 36. Now, another way, so we can multiply by that giant 1. And if you're having a hard time seeing that giant 1, maybe I can kind of highlight it in yellow. Right here is that 1. So I'm really multiplying it by a 3 and a 3, or 3 over 3. And I'm really multiplying it by 2 over 2, which is where that giant 1 comes in. So another thing that I can do is I can divide by a giant 1. So if I start with 8 to 12, let me erase that. That's supposed to be dots. I can start with 8 to 12. Okay, and then I need to divide. So when I think about this, can I divide by 5? And the answer to that is actually no. Because 5 doesn't go into 8 nicely and 5 doesn't go into 12 nicely. So it would be silly for me to pick 5 to divide with. So I guess at this point I should mention you can multiply by 5, but you can't divide by 5, because if you divide by 5, you're going to get decimal numbers and it's going to get really ugly. So we've got to think a little bit when it comes to dividing. What number goes into both 8 and 12? So when you're thinking about this, hopefully the numbers 2 or 4 came to mind. 2 and 4 go into both of those. So I could divide by 2, for instance. So I'm going to divide both numbers by 2. And so when I do this, 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. And then 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. So one equivalent ratio of 8 to 12 would be 4 to 6. Now we also said that 4 goes into both 8 and 12, so I can divide by 4. So I'm going to divide 8 by 4. And I'm going to divide 12 by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. So another ratio is going to be 2 to 3. 2 to 3 is equivalent. So right now I have the ratios of 16 to 24, 24 to 36, 4 to 6, 2 to 3, and let's come up with another one. So I'm actually going to start with 2 to 3 because 2 to 3 equals 8 to 12, and I'm going to use multiplication. Okay, 2 to 3 is kind of my simplest ratio. It's the smallest ratio, so to speak, using whole numbers. So it's in simplest form. We call that simplest form because nothing else goes into 2 or 3. And so from here, let's say I might multiply. You guys like to multiply by 10, so I might multiply 10. So another equivalent ratio would be 20. 2 times 10 is 20 to 30. 3 times 10 is 30. Okay, so that's how I could write 5 equivalent ratios.